The interesting thing is, only conservatives are paying attention. If you ask a liberal, he'll say, what's a convention? He'll say, what's Article 5? And because we're the only ones who care about the Constitution.
The left would like amendments they would like. We have amendments we would like. If they want to use a lefty introduced an Article 5 application in New York. It's not going anywhere even in New York, and it's not been introduced any other place. If George Soros wants to get 34 states to back a leftist agenda, let him try. It's just the same as George Soros trying to use the electoral. Are we going to give up electing good senators because George Soros is trying to elect his kind of senators? No, we're not. Are we going to give up?
No, he's got the money that pushes it.
But he's got the.
But
Listen. You got to listen. George Soros can get an Article 5 convention when he gets 34 states to pass an application that he writes. He can't come to hijack my applications. The states set the agenda. And so if George Soros has the gumption, he can't function in 34 states. He can only function in the big cities. Big cities, big money, big media go together. That gives you...
He's overthrowing governments throughout the world.
Fine. I'm not afraid of George Soros. I understand fear. If you want to be afraid of George Soros, you be afraid of George Soros. I'm not afraid of George... Well, okay, you can be concerned whatever you want. Let him do his own thing. If he can pull it off, great, more power to him. I think I can pull him off. I wasn't afraid of the teachers' union. I'm certainly not afraid of George Soros.
It's time to require lobbyists to disclose each contact they make on behalf of a client with my administration or with Congress. It's time to put strict limits on the contributions that lobbyists give to candidates for federal office. With all due deference to separation of powers, last week the Supreme Court reversed a century of law that I believe will open the floodgates for special interests, including foreign corporations, to spend without limit in our elections. I don't think American elections should be bankrolled by America's most powerful interests, or worse, by foreign entities. They should be decided by the American people. And I'd urge Democrats and Republicans to pass a bill that helps correct it.
From time to time, you've seen me talk about Wolf PAC. Now, that's a PAC we put together, and I founded it to get money out of politics, to say that corporations are not human beings. Isn't that amazing that we have to clarify that? And that they don't have the constitutional rights of human beings, they don't have inalienable rights, and they certainly don't have the right to buy our politicians. Well, Wolf PAC is doing great, not because of me, but because of the people who actually run it day to day. The volunteers and the great staff that's there. And in fact, I'm going to introduce you in a second to the new executive director. But I want to tell you that month to month, every single month, we have grown in petition signers, in volunteers, in every category you can imagine, including members, which is really important, and also revenue as well. Well, Ryan Clayton is a guy who worked as a political advisor for a long time and was then our political advisor since February and is the new executive director of Wolf PAC, and it's great to have him here. Ryan, thanks for joining us.
Then we got to fix Citizens United. We got to call a convention to propose an amendment.
I have a Wolf PAC update, a dramatic Wolf PAC update. We're coming, man. Now, look, I told you last week about Idaho and Kentucky. Did I just say Idaho and Kentucky? I mean, those are some pretty red states. How in the world are we going to get resolutions introduced to get a convention to call for an amendment to get money out of politics in Idaho and Kentucky? You know how we do it? By trying. Now, number one, our state director, Andrew Deskins in Idaho, said, look, man, I thought I'd just go for it. I thought maybe if I was just one person making these calls, I can get the ball rolling, and then more people can join in that effort if we accomplish something. He was totally right. Turns out that when you call the legislators, every once in a while you run into a guy who goes, hey, you know what, you're totally right. Money does control politics. Everybody is sick of it. 90% of my constituents agree with you, so I'll introduce a resolution. That's the first step. It's not the final step, but it's a great step in a place like Idaho and in Kentucky. In Kentucky, our state director is David Brooks, and he said, look, man, I was tired of hearing all the bad news, and I wanted to do something about it. Isn't that great when you're part of the solution, instead of just sitting there complaining about it? He did the same thing, called one rep after another, or something, until somebody said, hey, you know what? You're right about that. I'm going to introduce a resolution. Now we go to North Carolina. Our state director there is Jason Bonsal, and he had volunteer Stephen Pierce, both working together. They're calling rep, and I talk to them, man. Look, I talk to the state directors on the weekends. I call up all these different states and I say, how's it going? And I had talked to North Carolina before they had their breakthrough. And look, it's frustrating, but they're sitting there and they say, I'm going to pound away at this until we get an answer and until we get some results. Boom. Representative Marcus Brandon is going to be introducing the resolution in North Carolina. And guess what? They're going to get a Republican representative who's going to be the primary sponsor of that resolution to go along with Representative Marcus Brandon.